Hello, this is Dr. Joyce Alberts, clinical psychologist working in private practice in North Canterbury, New Zealand. I am posting a series of videos relating to the tragic death of police officer John O'Keefe. This resulted in two criminal trials where his girlfriend, Karen Reid, was accused of causing his death. In the first two videos, I have outlined the complex interactions and friendships between the police who were charged with investigating John O'Keefe's death and the people who were present at the time of his death. I've also had permission from the trial channel to use sections of their videos, and I will be showing you today how extensively the trial channel has covered this case and continues to cover this case. I was encouraged by the response I had from the trial channel, how pleased they were that I had asked permission and was planning to use the footage that they have put together. Encouraged to continue to make my own posts and to investigate this from my perspective as a psychologist. So what I want to do today is I am going to give you an outline of the two trials and a comparison between the two trials. So in the first criminal trial, this is where Karen Reid was accused of causing the death of John O'Keefe by reversing her Lexus SUV at about 26 miles per hour, so going very fast, rapidly in reverse, striking John O'Keefe, causing him to fall backwards onto the hard ground, causing injuries to his arm and to the back of his head. I am not going to show you the actual photographs of those injuries, especially the injuries to John O'Keefe's arm, as they are quite graphic in nature. But if you wanted to find them, I'm sure you can find them. So I want to compare the two trials because they were very, very different. In the first trial, the prosecutor or the Commonwealth presented so many witnesses. Pretty much all of the firefighters and ambulance staff who attended the death scene where John O'Keefe's body was found, and then the police officers who were involved in the investigation, and then various members of the Albert family who were present at the time of John O'Keefe's death. The second trial, which occurred in 2025, so about more than a year ago now, that trial was led by a special prosecutor brought in by the Commonwealth due to a potential conflict of interest within the Attorney General's office. So they brought in a prosecutor called Hank Brennan, and he had a completely different approach to the first prosecutor, and the whole trial was different. And in fact, you will see if you watch videos, and I will give example of those, the difference in the presentation and the evidence that were given, as especially I'm going to point to the likes of Kerry Roberts and Jen McCabe and others. In the first trial, Michael Proctor was called to give evidence, but he was not called to give evidence in the second trial. And I will explain that as we go today, as to why he was not called to give evidence. So let me just go to share screen. So I am going to show you the, I seem to have lost myself again. Oh no, here I am. There we go. So what you should see on your screen now is the playlist from the trial channel. And this is the first Karen Reid trial. So I began with showing a portion of David Giannetti. You'll see him there in this picture, sitting behind Karen Reid, his opening statements. I would encourage you to watch the whole one. Interesting that the next person to give evidence for the prosecution is Paul O'Keefe and his then wife, Erin O'Keefe. I understand they may or may not be still together. Situations like this can cause a lot of tension in people's relationships. So Paul O'Keefe was called for the prosecution in the first trial. Now, what's interesting is that Paul O'Keefe wasn't present. He did not go to the Waterfall Bar. He was not present at the Brian Albert's home. So you can watch for yourself to see whether any information that Paul O'Keefe and his partner Erin O'Keefe gave in the first trial, whether that was of use. Next, you'll see police officer Sarah, who was one of the first police officers to arrive on scene, gave evidence for the prosecution, as well as police officer Maloney, and then Timothy Nuttall. And I'm going to talk about Timothy Nuttall shortly. So you can see, as I said, the first people giving evidence were largely their first responders, firefighters, paramedics, and police officers. You can see here Lieutenant Gregory Woodbury, Daniel Whitley, Jason Becker was. Actually, I'm not sure who Jason Becker was. I might have to look at that myself. I've already mentioned Lieutenant Paul Gallagher. He is now retired, and he came up with a brilliant idea to use the leaf blower and the red solo cups as a way to gather evidence. And you'll see Sean Good gave evidence and then was cross-examined, and that's the fact that there's these two different videos will show you just how much time was taken with Sean Good. Sean Good has subsequent to the first and second trial. Sean Good was first put on leave, paid leave, and he has since resigned as a police officer. And you see Sergeant Michael Lank. Sergeant Michael Lank was known to Jennifer McCabe. She recognised him when he arrived on scene, and even said, "Is that you, Michael?" To Michael Lank when he arrived. Then you're going to see, as we scroll down, various people who were at the bar where John O'Keefe and Karen Reid were socialising. And you'll see here, this is the Waterfall bar. Actually, if I go back up to that person I didn't recognise, was it Jason Becker? No, it doesn't say who he is. You'll see on the description for the video who these people are. So this is Kurt Roberts. So Kurt Roberts is the husband of Kerry Roberts, who I mentioned. She was a good friend of John O'Keefe, and she had gone to the scene at 34 Fairview Road with Jen McCabe and Karen Reid. See, there's bartenders, people who were socialising, friends of Karen Reid. Then you see Chris Albert gives evidence. So Chris and Julie Albert, again, I've said they were friends of Courtney Proctor or Alberg, and also knew Michael Proctor through their relationship with Courtney, Courtney being Michael Proctor's sister. They were present at the Waterfall Bar, and there's varying conflicting information whether they returned to Brian Albert's property to continue socialising or whether they went home. Subsequent to the first trial, it's been claimed that Julie Albert's, Chris Albert has said that Julie Albert developed a migraine when they were at the Waterfall Bar, and so she went home, and then Chris Albert said he walked home from the waterfall. However, he also gave evidence that he was present at Brian Albert's house. And you see Nicole Albert, the wife of Brian Albert, gives her evidence, and then you see Brian Albert, now retired Boston police officer. He gave his direct evidence, and then he was cross-examined. Next, you see Brian Albert Jr. gives evidence. This is all for the prosecution, by the way. So that is the son of Brian Albert, so Brian Albert Jr., and then their daughter, Caitlin Albert. A friend, Caitlin's boyfriend, Tristan Morris, gives evidence, as well as a friend, Sarah Levinson, and you have Julie Nagel. Then I actually haven't watched this particular clip myself, so I am going to do that. The veterinary expert, Brian Nagel, who's the brother of Julie Nagel, who you may remember I mentioned, they were the second vehicle to arrive. So they arrived almost immediately behind Karen Reid, as Karen Reid's vehicle was approaching the intersection with Fairview Road, though my understanding is Ryan Nagel was coming from another direction. He gave way to Karen's vehicle, SUV, as she pulled into the road to park in front of Brian Albert's, and then Ryan Nagel had come up behind her. So as Ryan Nagel and his then girlfriend, Heather Maxon, left, they gave evidence, and if you watch these two clips, you will hear they give evidence that as they passed Karen's Lexus, they could clearly see into the Lexus. The interior light was on. They could see Karen seated in the driver's seat, and there was no one sitting in the passenger seat. They could not see anyone standing beside her vehicle or in front of the house. So the inference there is that John O'Keefe had got exited the Lexus and had walked into the property at 34 Fairview, the home of Brian Albert. As mentioned, though, those inside the home, the likes of Jen McCabe, Matt McCabe, Brian Albert, Nicole Albert, have all denied the fact that John O'Keefe came into the house. So there we have another person who was in that vehicle who gave evidence. And as I said up there, you can see on the description for Ryan Nagel's evidence, he says the woman in the black SUV. Then we got Ellie McCabe. I mentioned her in the first video that I did because she actually broke down in tears. She had a moment where factual information leaked out into a statement that she made on the witness stand, where she said, do you see the next person to give you evidence? Colin Albert. So Colin Albert is the middle son of Chris and Julie Albert. He's known to be aggressive. He's done video clips or TikTok clips himself where he's threatening to beat people up. And it's alleged that he had been confrontational to John O'Keefe. He got into a dispute with John O'Keefe for walking across John O'Keefe's lawn, because at the time, the Chris and Julie Albert lived close by to John O'Keefe, or lived on the same street. And Chris and Julie Albert would also post videos or send pictures taunting John O'Keefe, showing that they were walking across his lawn. So it became a point of dispute between these neighbours. So it's always been denied to this day that John O'Keefe entered the home and that Colin Albert was present. But you'll see here the title to this video shows that Ellie's statement, John wasn't at the house when John was there, out slips from her mouth. John was at the house. He was inside the house. And she's trying to say, look, no, Colin had already left. He'd left before John came inside the house. He wasn't there. She broke the pact. She strayed from the script that John O'Keefe was not in the house. You will see the reaction on her face as she realizes in the moment what she has said, and she breaks down in tears. Then you've got the likes of Matt McCabe, and this statement here, I thought she was crazy, is in reference to the way Karen Reid was, that she was hysterical, she was upset, she was distressed, and he just said, I thought she was crazy. So really, from the outset, just hostile towards Karen Reid. And that's why in that genogram I had that red line, hostile, Matt McCabe towards Karen. Here you'll see too in the next one, he's under cross-examination, and he sends a message to his group, knowing, and his group being Brian Albert, Nicole Albert, Jen McKay, and maybe some others, knowing that they were being investigated and interviewed by the police, and he directs them, Matt McKay, Jen's husband, to tell the police, tell them the guy never went in the house. That's a transcript that Ally McCabe broke. And then you'll see here 3 times that, 3 videos related to Jen McCabe. All of these videos, the first 2 videos are well over 2 hours each, and the second video, and this is again cross-examination and redirect. And then you've got Kerry Roberts, and as you can see, all of the people, just the amount of people who are giving evidence at the first trial is kind of breathtaking. Sanjit Barrows, I wanted to speak about him. I'll talk about him. He was from the Dighton police station. So he was from a different police department, but he was present at the time that Michael Proctor and I can't remember who else, might have been Tully or it might have been Yuri, when they seized Karen's Lexus from Karen's parents' place. So Karen's parents lived in Dighton at the time, and she had driven with her father from John O'Keefe's home back to her parents' home in Dighton, and the Boston police, came to seize her vehicle from that property. Then you'll see Michael Proctor gives his evidence. I will talk about that shortly and why that is critical, and why it is that you'll see Michael Proctor in the first trial but not the second trial. Then we've got Brian Tully. Brian Tully is also an important person, and you'll see him. He's the evidence officer, and he is holding up the sneaker, the shoe. Then we've got Jessica Hyde, a very, very interesting person, well worth watching her examination here. She makes some interesting statements and comments. She's obviously a big Star Wars fan, and you'll find that out. Then we have Trooper Paul. You cannot help but feel sorry for Trooper Paul. Trooper Paul was charged with doing the crash reconstruction for the first trial. He was well and truly out of his depth. During cross-examination, when Alan Jackson asks him theories around, crash reconstruction, he doesn't know basic physics. It wasn't qualified, wasn't sufficiently trained to do the work that he was doing. But you may see in other law troopers who break down things that there may have been 1 or 2 things he may have got more correct than subsequent crash reconstruction experts. And we've got Ian Whiffen. Ian Whiffen is another expert brought in by the prosecution for the first and second trial. And he is an expert in cell phone technology. Potential conflict of interest for this guy because he's developed his own software, which he's promoting separate to his work with Celebrate. Also, potential source of conflict here is that, interestingly, and it just continues to blow my mind, he changes the software for the second trial and suggests that all of the time stamps that are put into the Celebrate reports that have been used multiple times by multiple in multiple court cases to show conclusive evidence of where someone was at a point in time due to their text messaging or their phone location data or using their cell phone in a certain way. And he, in the second trial, says, no, we've now removed those timestamps because you just can't rely on them. And you're thinking, well, what about all these other cases where you did rely on those timestamps and now you're saying you can't? And there's a reason why that was done. There's a reason why. And this is why I said in my second interview that, in my second video, sorry, that um, the evidence put forward by the prosecution just lacked credibility and was continually undermined. And you have um, two important people here, Dr. Stonebridge and then Dr. Scordy Bello, who is a medical examiner. So Dr. Stonebridge, a truly brilliant, outstanding intellect, intelligent woman, and she did the forensic examination on John's brain, showing the damage that was done not just to the rear of John's brain, where his head either he was struck from behind or as his head struck something as he fell backwards, but also he had injuries to the front of his face, and he had injuries that were consistent with blunt force trauma to the front of his face. And that was not able to be examined by explained by the prosecution. Now we start to get into the defence case here. So we get Lucky Loughran, and he was the worked for the Canton, if you like, council, and he was the person who ploughed the road. So he had the snow plough truck, which he fondly referred to as Frankenstein because it had a mixture of parts from different trucks. So as I can show you just video, where are we up to? Video 72. Oh no, video 72. Then we go on to day 27, day 27. So we've got about 73, 74 videos, if I count correctly. So that is for trial number 1. Let's have a look at trial number 2. Often fondly referred to as Karen Reid 2.0. So this is where the Commonwealth of the Crown get to have a second go. So let's just have a quick scroll down now and let's see who's here and who's not here. So we see Timothy Nuttall, so the firefighter. So he was giving evidence in the first trial and the second trial. Kerry Roberts gave evidence in the first trial and the second trial, but unlike the first trial, she's now cross-examined in the second trial, and that is very interesting. Then we have Peggy O'Keefe. So she gives evidence in the second trial, but she did not give evidence in the first trial. Trooper Guarino gave evidence the first trial and second trial, as well did Daniel Whitley, Michael Camerino, Nicholas Guarino again, and he is going through John and Karen's text messages in this video. Dr. Gary Waller, I don't think he gave evidence in the first trial, but he gives evidence second one. Jason Becker, again, he gives evidence in both trials. And now we have the ARCA people. So ARCA were the expert crash reconstruction people, and I'm going to give you a wee spoiler here. They were brought in on the first and second trial, not by the prosecution. They were brought in because they did their investigation at the request of the FBI. So the FBI were looking into the police investigation of John O'Keefe's death, as far as we know. They might have been looking into other things, we're not sure. But they had commissioned ARCA experts to determine whether it was possible that John O'Keefe's death and injuries could have been caused by Karen Reid's Lexus striking him. And they found it's not possible. His injuries were not consistent with being struck by a vehicle, and it was not possible for Karen Karen Reid, driving her vehicle in reverse to have caused his death. Ian Whiffen gives evidence again in both trials, second trial, as does Jen McCabe, Jen McCabe, Jen McCabe, Jen McCabe, and that's really going to be important. Hannah Knowles, I said she gave evidence in both, as did Ryan Nuggle, Heather Maxon, Sarah Leverinson. Okay, so we got the police again and professionals, Katie McLaughlin, firefighter, Paul Gallagher, the retired police officer, leaf blower man, solar cut man. A new person introduced is Robert Gilman, a meteorologist. Nicholas Garino again, further police officers who gave evidence in first and second trial. I am going to show you shortly a picture because in the second trial you'll see here, as you can see in the front of this clip, Trooper Connor Keefe holds up the shoe of John O'Keefe. Actually, you can see it in these two clips here if you look closer. I want to zoom in. If you look closely here, you are going to see the shoe being held by Connor O'Keefe. Then Trooper Yuri Buchanek, he is asked to open an evidence bag, which he's required to do by using scissors. And you can see, I'm going to show you a better photograph, but you'll see the look of confusion on his face as he looks down at the shoe. It's not the shoe that he was expecting to be in the evidence bag. It's going to be interesting. So you can see here, we've got, if I scroll down now, how many videos have we got in the second one? So there were about 73 in the first one, and we've got 47, 48, 49, 50, 51, 52, 53, 54. Okay, now what's interesting is that the reason why there's fewer videos in the second trial that the trial channel has put up is that in the first trial, the prosecutor just brought in, he just threw everything. It was just like, let's throw a bowl of spaghetti at the wall and see what sticks. So the prosecution was led by Hank Brennan, who you'll see here, and the defence largely led by Alan Jackson, who you'll see here. I will, as I said, I'll do another video another time where I'll compare the opening and closing arguments in trial 1, trial 2. Interesting fact for Massachusetts and the way they do their trials different from New Zealand. You'll see here that in the closing, the defence goes first, followed by the prosecution. In New Zealand, it would be the prosecution, followed by the defence, and then the prosecution can come back. Okay, so I wanted to show you just briefly, I'm going to stop sharing that one. I'm going to get you dizzy by scrolling through. I want to go to a Word document that I put together. And this is part of my questions that I had, but I want to show you those two photographs. Okay, I'm just going to scroll down to the two photographs and I'll see if I can, might just take, no, I will just leave that there. Okay. Right. First of all, I will show you. I took these photographs. They're available publicly, and I obtained them through doing searches into different news agencies who were putting up stories. So I talked about the leaf blower, and here is a photograph taken. It's a still photograph from the video that while they were using the leaf blower to remove the sand so they could collect blood evidence. Okay, stop for a minute there, and I will go down to the next video because I want to show you this. This really caught my eye. Okay, just scrolling quickly. Here we go. I want you to have a look at this one. Let's go back to share screen. So you'll see this on the trial channel's video, and I did highlight it. So John O'Keefe, when he was taken from the scene at 34 Fairview Road to hospital, he had one shoe on. So in the process of examining the scene, so remember his body was found in the early hours of the morning. It was still dark at the time because it's winter at that time of year in Boston. During the day, the crime scene was not secured. People were coming and going. And the team that were called in to, if you like, do the forensic search of the property weren't called in until the evening. They needed floodlights. There's speculation as to why they weren't called in till the evening to do their search of the scene. I have my own theory on it and my personal opinion, which is based on information listening to the trial, is that they wanted the police officers who were doing this shoddy investigation, my opinion, needed time to plant evidence. It sounds like a bold statement. I'm not the first person to make that statement. As I've said, I've claimed this saying, my SAS comes with citations. The need to keep the forensic people away from the scene was they needed to be able to break the tail light of Karen Leeds' Lexus and then to plant pieces of the tail light onto the front lawn at 34 Fairview to strengthen their case against Karen Reid. Remember, her tail light was cracked, and when she left John O'Keefe's property in the early hours of the 29th of January as she was attempting to drive to Jen McCabe's house. There's video footage showing her vehicle colliding with John O'Keefe's vehicle. You can see the wheel move, but a snow falls off. So she's definitely made contact sufficient enough to crack the polycarbonate plastic of the tail light. So here you can see the photograph taken at the time where they found the shoe under the snow. And this is by the edge, or as they call it, the asphalt berm. So you've got the road surface, I understand, would be here. This would be the grass. I could be incorrect, but that's what I understand. So this is where they found the shoe. This is the police officer during trial 2 who takes the shoe out of the evidence bag. You'll see he's wearing gloves. The evidence bag was sealed. You can watch that on the trial channel. You'll see just the awkwardness of holding the evidence bag, cutting it open, cutting it through the red tape that seals it to take out the shoe. I'm just going to focus through again. You can see another photo of the shoe. Let's go through quick. Sorry, I hope this doesn't give anyone a headache. Okay, this is the second trial. This is Officer Yuri, who's giving evidence. He is expecting to pull out the shoe that was recovered from the hospital. This is the shoe that allegedly was on John O'Keefe's body at the hospital. Have a look at the shoe carefully. He's opened an evidence bag. It was sealed. He had to use scissors. He's looking really confused. He's looking down at the labelling of the evidence bag because it should have been the right shoe. This is clearly a left shoe. Let's go back up again. Let's have a look. Left shoe found on scene. Left shoe consistent with the left shoe found on the scene. Inconsistent with what was labelled to be the right shoe. retrieved from the hospital, the right shoe that arrived at the hospital on John O'Keefe's body. This is why I have said my SAS carries citations. My SAS comes with citations. This is why I say it's a shoddy investigation. This is why, and not just myself, I'm not original here. and there's certainly many others who can show you how this is just one element. There's so many elements of this investigation that just literally make your eyes pop and go, how could the police do this? So you have trial two, one officer opens an evidence bag, pulls out and shows the jury, this is the left shoe. This is the shoe. The jury's just been shown the photograph that I showed you first of the shoe with snow on it by the edge of the road in the grass. This is how the shoe was when we uncovered it under the snow, because it had been covered by snow. This is why we didn't see it during the day, because it was covered. It wasn't until we got the team in to clear the snow and do their investigation that the shoe was found, the left shoe. Then when we went to the earlier in the morning, when John O'Keefe's body was taken to the hospital, we recovered the right shoe, because that is part of the clothing that John O'Keefe had on his body when he was removed from 34 Fairview. So Yuri is on the witness stand in the second trial, and he's asked to show the jury the shoe that was retrieved from the hospital, which would have been the right shoe for the right foot. He picks up the bag that he has brought into the witness stand with him. He brings with him the evidence bag. He opens the evidence bag, which is sealed. So it cannot be the evidence bag from the day before, because the other officer opens that evidence bag that contained the left shoe found at the scene. He cut it. You can see it on the trial channel's video. He cuts the bag open to remove the shoe and displays it to the jury. So how is it that we get another evidence bag that is sealed, labelled incorrectly, and Yuri, red-faced, is standing in front of the jury, and you can see the shock on the judge's face and her surprise, because it's the wrong shoe. It's not the right shoe on the right foot. It is the left shoe. This is clearly a left shoe. I also just want to go back up to the photograph, because there's other photographs. Have a look at this. White shoe. It looks like this shoe has a white sole. You see that? White at the toe with white going underneath. White. This looks all white. Let's go back to that photograph. Oh, I'm not screen sharing. Let me screen share. Let me screen share. Come on, screen share. Where are you? Here we go. There are times I do break out in singing. I'm sorry. My sisters will give me a hard time. They tell me I'm not good at singing, but I will screen share. Okay, let me have a look. Here's what I was pointing to. Okay. These are my citations. This is why my SAS comes with citations. Yuri is in the witness stand on the second trial. As I said, he's asked to open the evidence bag, which is sealed, which he does. He uses scissors. So he's holding his hands are gloved, and he's holding what he expected to be the right shoe for the right foot, obtained from the hospital. You can see the confusion on his face as he looks down at the label. And you can see this on the trial channel video. And you can see the surprise on the judge's face as she's going, is that the right shoe or the left shoe? Is that the right shoe or the wrong shoe? It's not the right shoe. It's definitely the wrong shoe. It's the left shoe. What I was also pointing out to is see the top of the shoe here. You can see it's white, white along the side, and you can see the white continues underneath the shoe, the sole. From this, I would expect if he was to flip the shoe upside down, from what I can see here, logic is telling me that the sole of the shoe would be white. This is a very clean, very pristine looking shoe, as is the shoe shown by this police officer. Very white, very clean. Now, I understand that John O'Keefe was very particular. He was very particular, probably a very neat, clean person, that he also, he was a shoes off person. When you walk into his house, you're expected to take your shoes off. He would have not have liked anyone to be in his house wearing their shoes, and prosecution actually makes a big deal of that. But see here again, you can see the white extending up to the top of the toe. So this is the left shoe, and you can see again white. Now have a look over here. Photograph on the scene. You can see the white coming along here. But can you see here it's black? I can't see black here. Can you? So no black here. But that's definitely black. Am I my eyes deceiving me? Am I the only one here? I know I'm not the only one because others have pointed this out, and it caught me by surprise too. Because when I was listening, often I listen to the trials. I'm not actually sitting in front of a computer watching them, so I didn't see the footage as it was shown to the jury. So this photograph was shown to the jury, and this is the shoe that was shown in real time in the courtroom. He's displaying a shoe that, for all intents purposes, has a white tip coming up to the toe. So that white sole extending all the way up to the top. Here, the scene photograph, the shoe as it was on site, this is supposed to be the left shoe, has a black sole, does not have a complete white. Looks as if the black runs part way along, which would have been part way along here. I'm sorry, but this looks like a different shoe. It really does. It looks like a different shoe. You can see here, dark here. You see that? It does not look white all the way from this edge to that edge. That looks dark and much darker than this bit. The toe looks slightly different. Let's have a look at Yuri holding his shoe that he's taken out. See that? That top part comes up. It wraps up and over. This is definitely a white-soled shoe. White. Don't see black. There's no dark. There's no difference in colour or even the edge of it. Again, if you have a look at this photo, there looks to be a bit of a ridge along here. And that doesn't appear in the other photograph. So what was going on there? So again, I challenge you, if you are interested in this, you can do a comparison yourself between evidence presented to the jury in the first trial and evidence presented to the jury in the second trial. You can do a comparison of who gave evidence in the first trial and who did not give evidence in the second trial. So let me explain why Michael Proctor does not give evidence in the first trial. Remember, he was the lead investigator, even though the likes of Yuri or other police officers from the Boston Police Department have tried to sort of distance him away from that. In the first trial, it was very clear. He was the lead investigator. He was in charge of arranging who was going to interview, who was going to do what, and making sure all of the evidence is collected so they can present this to the attorney office and to go ahead with a trial. And basically they act as investigators for the Attorney General to put together their case. So in the first trial, Michael Proctor, friends of the Alberts, um, his text messages to his friends and to his sister are read into evidence, and they are horrendous. They are vile. This is a man who is now known to be an equal opportunity racist. Not my terms, terms used by other people. But in the first trial, the focus of the text messages, which I understand were obtained by the FBI, not by the prosecution and not by the defense. They were provided to both by the FBI as part of the FBI investigation into the police investigation of John O'Keefe, his death. So early hours of the morning, John O'Keefe is found. Michael Proctor is assigned as police, the lead investigator, and he starts texting his friends. He texts his sister, and he lets them know that he's doing a homicide investigation. He discloses the name of the victim, John O'Keefe, to his sister and to his friends before it is made public. This is not public information. This has not been released to the press. It's not been part of any news item. Michael Proctor releases this to his mates. And they start asking questions. Well, and he lets them know he was found on the lawn of another police officer. And one of his friends goes, well, that police officer is going to be in a lot of trouble. There's going to be a lot of scrutiny on Brian Albert. And effectively, Michael Proctor responds, this is within hours. This is 29th of January 2022. Within hours of starting his investigation that, nope, Brian Albert's not going to get into any trouble because he's a Boston police officer. So very clearly within hours, Michael Proctor's revealing his bias and that he is going to protect Brian Albert. My opinion, based on that text message. Michael Proctor is asked a question by his friends because he's told them John O'Keefe's a police officer from Boston and he's found dead on Brian Albert's lawn, who's also a police officer. And because he's a Boston police officer too, just like Michael Proctor and John O'Keefe, but they're because, sorry, John O'Keefe, you're gone, but we're going to protect Brian Albert. So he says, no, he's not going to get in trouble. And then he's asked questions, who did it? And Michael Proctor says, yeah, it's the girlfriend. I think he said something like Michael Proctor had gone to the hospital, had seen John O'Keefe's body, and said Karen waffled him, meaning she struck him with the rear of her vehicle. But remember, John O'Keefe's injuries are above the neck, so front of the face, back of the head, but also to his arm. I understand it's his right arm. I could stand to be corrected, but that's what I understand. If he is hit by a Lexus, this is a big SUV. This is a very heavy vehicle. You might do some research into that. But allegedly traveling at 26 miles an hour, not 26 kilometres. In New Zealand, we use kilometres. We are a metric country, not imperial. So 26 miles an hour in reverse in these conditions with snow, slippery roads, just doesn't make sense. But if he had been struck by that, it's still not even clear whether that force would have been sufficient to break the tail light in the manner alleged by Michael Proctor. But there's no bruising. There's literally no bruising from the neck down, no broken limbs, no broken arm, elbow, hip, leg, nothing. No internal injuries from the neck down consistent with being struck by a vehicle. Myself, personally, this is many years ago, I witnessed an elderly woman being struck by a vehicle on a pedestrian crossing, and she died of internal injuries. So I understand her spleen or liver were ruptured. Her injuries were internal. She did have a fractured hip, and the vehicle was not going fast. And I know that because there was a police investigation. I also know that because the person who struck the pedestrian had made a left-hand turn onto the road. The pedestrian crossing is here, and the police investigation showed that definitively he was not able to have reached 50 kilometres an hour. The estimated speed was, I understand, 25 to 30 kilometres an hour, which is far less than 26 miles an hour. And there was no braking because this woman was on, she stepped in front of the vehicle. The driver did not have time to brake. So she was hit at that speed by a large vehicle. It may or may not be comparable in size to a Lexus SUV, but it was a large vehicle and a high vehicle. And she had a fractured hip because I went running over to her, made sure she was lying in the recovery. And it didn't move her. She wasn't in the recovery position. She was on her back, and the position of her leg, it was quite clear that either her thigh bone or hip was fractured. So I saw myself, witnessed a pedestrian being struck by a vehicle at a similar or less than speed, a similar vehicle of similar size, no braking, so hit at the speed at which the vehicle was travelling at, and that person died of internal injuries with fractures. John O'Keefe did not have any. And Michael Proctor is straight away alleging, even though there's not been time to do an autopsy or find a cause of death or even document what the injuries are, external, internal, is telling his friends that Karen Reid hit him and killed him. But worse than that, Michael Proctor is describing Karen in a way that objectifies her. He is using foul language. He discloses to his friends her medical conditions. He breaches every protocol. So as a result of his text messages being made public in trial number 1, the Boston Police Department investigate Michael Proctor's behaviour, the manner in which he conducted himself during this investigation, and he is placed on leave during that. He is then stood down. He loses his job. So this is before trial number 2. He then begins to appeal his dismissal from the Boston Police Office. So he's supported by the police union lawyer, and he starts an appeal. He does an interview, which is televised, as does his sister Courtney and his wife Elizabeth, claiming that he's now become a target of the Karen Reid movement, the Free Karen Reid, and that he's being prosecuted. All he did was his job. He did a really good job. He's a good guy. Yes, it's unfortunate he used foul language when he was talking about Karen Reid, but he let his emotions get away with him. He catches himself out because he says, under evidence in the first trial, when he's asked, why did you do this? Why did you text and share this information? Why using such foul language and hatred towards Karen? And he says, well, as it was over the course of his investigation into the death of a police officer that his emotions got held up against Karen Reid. But that does not fit, Michael, because you were sending these messages on day 1 within hours. So within hours, you let your emotions get away with you, not within days. But during the course of Michael Proctor's appeal against his dismissal, further text messages and communications of Michael Proctor from his personal phone to friends, colleagues, his sister, who he had messaged multiple times per day, revealed that this was a pattern of behaviour. These messages and the way he spoke about Karen Reid were typical of the way Michael Proctor spoke about other people he was investigating. He made such vile comments around people of different ethnic groups. He used words and terminology that I would say 99% of people would never ever use, certainly not in a way that would be publicised, not in a way I could not use those words. I don't want to, I would never, but even if I wanted to, I could not use those and publish them or broadcast them on a YouTube channel. That's how vile they are. He would make statements like he would wish that he could just go into Kenton and literally either punch in the face or kill people of a certain ethnic group. He said to a colleague that he noticed that there'd been a car accident, but don't hurry on your way to the scene because the person who was injured is of a certain ethnic background. Just let him die. It's not worth saving. Don't rush. Take your time, mate. So as a result of all of those messages, and even more have come out, his police, the police lawyer representing him, the union lawyer, dropped him the next day. So his appeal was ended. So he lost his job. I understand his marriage has broken down because he said vile things that it's just how a woman could back up a man like that. And it seems that his wife did not back him up in the end when she realised the true extent of Michael Proctor's character. Hence, the second trial, he was on the witness list, but there was no way Hank Brennan was going to call him as a witness for the prosecution. There was a little bit of conflict whether the defence was or was not going to call him, because if they called him, he would have had to again read out his own text and just show what a horrible person he really is. But the defence chose not to, and I think that they didn't need to. Is my personal opinion, and obviously because Karen was found not guilty. So that's the reason why Michael Proctor did not give evidence in the second trial. And it's interesting because in the subsequent civil cases that are ongoing, Michael Proctor is continuing to attempt to avoid giving evidence or making statements. He is basically running and hiding and doing everything he can not to appear in these civil cases. Not surprisingly, he's not in a good space. And while I would not wish any harm or any ill to any person, unfortunately, in this case, Michael Proctor has brought this on himself.